lot of these things that are oftentimes just called art are communal activities that go way beyond just spectacle, but they're participatory actions that really make a major, major difference in our community. It's no accident that we have all around the country for years and decades and centuries the dismantling and the disruption of these type of activities. If it's people dancing in a cipher, all of a sudden there are laws coming along and saying you can't dance at Fisherman's Wharf, you can't dance in Berkeley's Zellerbach, you can't be in the subway, you can't be on the BART. It's no accident when you hear the drumming that from Harlem to the Lake Mary, you have people that are complaining and then putting up noise ordinance to make that not happen. And so I think there's an understanding, whether our communities know it or not, that there's something about when all this comes together, when you hear the songs, when you see the dance, and you see the heart and soul manifested in the movements, that something's about to happen, and that's very scary for people in power. And so they go, you know what, we don't need art and recreation at the schools. We don't need funding for all these boys and girls clubs or all these after-school centers. So let's kind of keep that in mind, and I think that's where I want to go with some of the conversation that we're going to have about restorative justice. We have a number of people on the panel, and I think any one of them could hold court by themselves. I'll just briefly go through them, and as we ask questions, I'll bring up some of the history. To my left and your right is Krea Gomez, instructor of Community Action Learning Project, an extended program director of North Oakland Community Charter School, and just a plain old freedom fighter. Can we give it up for her? We have James Bell, who is the founder and president of the W. Hayward Burns Institute, which was founded in his work. Has worked in over 200 counties in 23 states to engage justice stakeholders and communities on how to build equity in the administration of justice. Can we give it up for him? Elizondo is an active leader in the restorative justice in Northern California since 2003. She's developed a wide range of restorative justice programs, trainings, and practices, peacemaking traditions, and she does a lot of work in the jails, in particular San Quentin, and she brings to the table traditions that are found in Mexico and beyond. So can we give it up for her? And added to this is Rick Butler, who is the other half of Shotzi Butler. And you saw the Healing Justice thing, so the films and things and the work that they've been doing to bring these messages and to challenge us and to bring to life some of these scenarios that are often marginalized and not made to the mainstream. We owe them a great deal of gratitude, so let's give it up for Rick. I'm going to start off with you, Krea, because you do have 6 kids, and you do work in a school. And one of the things that I was mentioning, and grab that mic over there, let's see who needs that mic over there. One of the things that I was mentioning is how oftentimes we can look at some of these productions and see them as art and they're beautiful, but we forget that there's a lot deeper situations connected to that it's healing, it's therapeutic, and it's no accident that our kids are involved in that, but it often comes into conflict with those in higher power who don't want to see this manifest itself. Like, why are they dancing? Why are they rapping? Why are they doing drumming? Learn reading, writing, and arithmetic. But from your perspective, how important is it to have this thing that we call culture in the midst, and how does it work for healing? And maybe you can use some of your experiences being a mother.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me? This is loud. I don't know if there's a way we can turn it down. Okay, so I think culture is imperative. I think it's like at the core of everything that people must return to. I think a lot of the times young people, and things that are attached to young people, like joy and dancing and rap, right? And all these things that young people, and people just in general, use to express themselves, I think is young people really, and people just trying to return to the very essence of who we are, and that's free people, right? Like, I think we don't often think about it in this way, but many of the laws and many of the policies and procedures that we have are a suppression of joy. It is, they come from, right, at their root, this idea that we've been experiencing, especially people of color, for hundreds of years of assimilation, right? So I'm gonna create a law, I'm gonna create a procedure, because I don't like what you're doing. Actually, you should be doing what I'm doing. And so the law is gonna state that if you're not like me, that you're not doing the right thing. And so I think at its core, especially in schools, right, it comes from this idea that we're teaching lessons, that we're teaching young people how to conform for their own good, that we're teaching young people that life is rigid and life is conformity. And if you can't sit in your seat, right, if you can't sit and listen for long periods of time, something's wrong with you. And so, to a degree, I mean, like, the reality of it is that those systems are working very well. And I think with the elimination of art and these cultural programs that, well, my school has, and actually I should say I just left my school. I just left from being a dean for a number of years at my school to be a parent again. And honestly, part of it is to be able to participate in a whole nother way. For my own kids, but also for the students that I've really come to love and cannot see me in this hierarchy. It just doesn't work for them, and it really honestly doesn't work for me. So yeah.
Tie that into restorative justice, you know, the practices that work for you, and that may be some tidbits that we can take home and really start to apply.
So it's interesting because I was watching this performance, and one of the things that I noticed, one of the movements I noticed a lot of is the idea of covering our mouths, right? This was a major movement in the dance production. And I think that's honestly, that's one of the first steps in restoring justice, is like giving people voice, right? And teaching people how to use their voice. And it's one of the things that I really love about my school, because we actually, from the age of 5, begin to teach people how, be able to teach our students how to use their voice. And so it's not just about saying ouch when someone hurts you. It's about identifying how that made you feel, right? What you wish they would have did differently, and then asking them to do such. And I know that sounds so elementary, but like, how many of you actually remember being taught how to do that, right? So, teach kids how to communicate. And because of this, we've been able to pretty much eliminate our expulsion process at my school. Because why would you need it, right? If you have this greater understanding that kids that hurt or have that impact or impact other people, it's rooted in something. And that what they don't need to do is to be ignored and silenced and told you're not good enough for this place. But it's about working with them and their families, right? And reminding everyone that's been impacted by that child's behavior, that they're impacting that child's behavior too. And also that child is a child, right? And that like the child mind doesn't even know what the hell you're talking about half the time. And so you telling them that they're bad and they didn't do the right thing often doesn't compute in the same way it does for us. They are great perceivers, bad interpreters. Totally perceive, you're upset with me, interpret why, completely wrong. And so I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that I was part of this process that brought in circles for our students to do. So our students could lead circle by the time they're in 4th grade, and often do for the younger students and the older students. We teach it as like a part of, like 1 day a week, students are actually having an hour and 10-minute session on communication and peacemaking, which I wish every school found important enough to dedicate an hour and 10 minutes for every grade to do that every week. But it makes a huge difference.
We appreciate that. Let me bring this over to James. The W. Hayward Burns Institute, 200 counties, all over the world, 23 states. Tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing. You train folks on, how to bring about these systems of justice and all that. So maybe in a nutshell, let's kind of build off of what we're talking about, because I guess to a degree we are talking about how do we really bring about one justice, how do we get some restorative justice, what does that mean, and what the different interpretations people have when you even mention those words.
Yeah, Davey, that's a lot, bro. It's a lot in 10 minutes to 9 on a school night. And I got about a minute to do it, right? So I want to thank you guys for coming. I want to thank Nicole for inviting me and for you guys to stay. So I always start this gratitude with the fact that I was born in South Carolina in America's apartheid of Jim Crow in a segregated hospital. Black doctors could not deliver babies. A white doctor would take over to deliver me from my mother, because that was America's apartheid. And that was the law. And so essentially, I see law in two ways, and the justice sector in two ways. The first, societally, we need to be self-critical as a society, because the justice that we're getting is the justice we've given permission for them to give us. And so too often we equate punishment with safety, and the ills of humanity are cured by more humanity. And so that is the piece that is restorative. We need well-being as a way to have people stop hurting each other. And so I would say that quickly, the notion of safety has been hijacked by the ideas of custody, control, and suppression as a way to get safety, and not intervention, restoration, and humanity as a way to get safety. And so I've just returned from Holland and England, because they're beginning to get concerned in those two countries about overrepresentation of religious minorities, blacks as they're called, and minority ethnics are the terms that they're using in Europe. And the one thing that I will leave you with before I pass the mic to think about is the notion of safety, meaning that I should not hit Krea, she should not hit me, I should not burn down her house, she should not burn mine, I should not rape her, I should not assault her, I should not rob her. That's safety. That's what we want as a society. But what we have been doing in this country, and we don't have time to get into how we fix it, but I want you to understand the distinction between safety, the law being used for safety, and the law being used for social control. Social control is race conscious. It is about oppression. In a system that will never admit social control because it's hiding it as safety. And so laws about social control are what this wonderful art production was about, and the way the dance manifested itself in terms of this. So I would always ask us to understand that distinction, that don't have people say to us when we want safety and they provide us with social control, that we're cool with that, because they are very different. And at some point, we might can have that conversation, but I'll leave it for that right now.
Let me ask you a question to follow up on that. Social control, from the way you describe it, equals power. And a lot of people are attracted to power. And in this quest for restorative justice, how do we intervene? Not so much with hurt people, because I think that's something that we need to do, and to really make sure people feel whole. I'm addicted to power. I want to get some of that social control. And, in the course of it, I may mask myself so that once I get that social control, I can get you, her, him, everybody else. This lust for power is something that I don't think we always address and really directly deal with in ways that I think we might have to. So let's kind of tie that into this.
So really quickly, I will try to give you these two concepts about that. Americans are very comfortable with the notion of equality. Equality is like, I don't want to say apple pie because I actually like peach pie. So equality is like peach pie. It is something that we all say we have. Hey, we're all equal. We're striving for equality. You had a black president. We have equality. Equality is here. And it also means I don't have to do anything differently than what I'm doing right now vis-a-vis power and privilege. Because privilege is the ability to be willfully ignorant about what is happening to other people, especially people of color. It's a willful ignorance, it's a privilege. Oh, I didn't know that. I'm not a bad person. The second thing, what we don't want in this power discussion, Davey, is equity. Because something about equity means, wait a minute, I don't know what that word means, but it ain't equality. And something about it sounds like somebody got to give up something. I don't know what, but this equity thing, health equity, health outcomes, housing equity, I don't know about this equity word. Because what equity means is I have to do something differently, and that means sharing power. And my position is we will never eliminate or reduce mass incarceration without those currently in power having to share it with the communities whose misery they're processing. We must have a sharing of power. And I don't know any group of people that have willingly ceded power without electing Donald Trump, without saying the other, or one of my favorite biblical figures, the scapegoat. Think of where the scapegoat came from. If you don't know the derivation of that word, look it up. Of who is the scapegoat? What is the scapegoat? And that is a power dynamic to say zero-sum game. By you getting some power, that means I'm losing some power. And I am going to use the law and all the resources at my behest to make sure that that power, which is seen as neutral and for your safety, is actually there for my social control.
Well, you gave us a lot to think about. I asked a question and then you came back. I'm going to have to come back and hit you again. Rose, you work inside the prisons. And you do a lot of restorative justice work there. My first question would be, what is it like? And I'm also, in kind of adding to this question of power, how do the folks that are incarcerated that you work with see the notion of power? Because there's a system within a system when you're inside the jails. How do they reconcile having power, but also dealing with restorative justice, and also having this thing called social control, which they all are dealing with? So I want to get power, I'm dealing with oppression, and some folks that want to have me socially controlled. There's a lot going on here. So let's talk a little bit about your work.
Okay, so it's a wonderful question. And to start, there was just a restorative justice conference here in Oakland, and 1,300 people came, which is the largest number of people ever to come to a national conference. And the theme was, I brought this right here, moving from the margins to the center. And in San Quentin, I work with a program called the Restorative Justice Interfaith Roundtable, and the men themselves inside were the ones who wanted to start the program. So it's switching a power dynamic because they wanted to learn. I have supported them along with others in being leaders. And so it's empowering yourself. It's the self-determination. If someone says you're a leader, when that person has not had power, let me tell you, they step into it. It's really beautiful. And the men, they make the decisions, and I should also say there's transgender. So we say the men and women in San Quentin. They're the ones who make the decisions. It's their program. It started out small. 200 men and women come to the program each week because they're the leaders of the circle. And so that power dynamic of the people who are most impacted by the injustice taking leadership, that's how we will flip this paradigm. And we partner with UC Berkeley's law school, Bolt Law, and the men are teaching restorative justice to the law students. So it's flipping that charity model. And one thing I so appreciated about tonight and the dance was I don't know about identities, but a lot of people of color and leaders through their dance, like really showing us awareness of what we need to do to raise our power as community, because art brings us together. And in San Quentin, we use circles. We've had poetry circles. And instead of speaking, we'll write poetry and then share that. And then we've also had the ciphers too. And this is bringing in the cultural piece. And it's very, very empowering, and the spiritual piece, because it's interfaith. If you can bring your whole self to your work, what you love, your family, your spiritual traditions, you're going to be there. That's why we have such a successful program.
You know, you mentioned cipher, and maybe we can build on that a little, because there's so many different types of ciphers. There's the dance cipher, there's the emceeing or rap cipher. And oftentimes we associate ciphers with hip hop, but when you start reading and doing history, you start to see that this manifestation of people being in a circle, sharing that energy, goes on for a very long time in many different communities. You know, I remember reading H. Rap Brown's book, Die Nigga Die, and in the book he's describing in 1959 what sounds like a cipher in 2017 with people standing around, except they were 40 deep and they were rhyming and he puts the original rhymes there. And one of the things that stands out is this notion of like you lose yourself in the world. And you talk to dancers and they're in this circle, in that B-boy and B-girl circle, and you lose yourself and you're gone from everything. And it's addictive, like you gotta get in the cipher. Can you talk a little bit about how that manifests itself? Because you were telling me about some of the things that the folks behind the bars work with their ciphers, how healing it is, and I think that's lost on folks. There's a reason why we're in that circle standing up for hours at a time. There's a reason why people are dancing even with injuries. You know, these folks may need body work, but they'll be back here because you got to. It's something about it. So how is that manifesting with the folks you're with?
So what's really beautiful is I'm friends with R. Carlos Nakai and his wife Pam, and he's the Native American, and maybe he's been nominated, I think 11 or 12 times for a Grammy Award. I don't know how many times he's won. He came into the prison and spoke about creativity through the Native American tradition. But basically, he was speaking about freestyling. And how when we are connected to each other profoundly, recognize that interconnection, we can go to a place where our ancestors, the ancient children, are speaking, singing, dancing, everything with us and through us.
Some people call it speaking in tongue at a church, but it's that feeling is everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's really beautiful, and so sometimes we do a practice where the elders in San Quentin, the OGs, the younger men there will reflect back to them, mirroring in freestyle the teachings, like the restorative justice teachings, in the moment. No time for prep, just in the moment, reflecting it back, and it's like, wow. And what this also does is then the younger men there, they are paying exquisite attention because they want to get in that mix.
Yeah. You talked about, well, we were talking, you bring in a lot of traditions, Mesoamerican traditions, peacemaking traditions. Give us a couple of examples of that and how that is, embraced and, bears fruit.
So the start of the show today had the corn, and Jerry Theo speaking about that we are from corn. That's our belief, is that we are born, we're the children of the corn. I think that might be a spooky book or something, but
They always appropriate.
but we come from the corn, and so corn is a part of the restorative justice traditions, because corn is fertility. And if we can speak in a way that our words fertilize each other, if we can think in a way that our thoughts are fertile thoughts, and instead of having the negativity bias, if we can have a positivity bias and fertilize our own thoughts, like water those good thoughts and water the thoughts of others, that's restorative circles, that's peacemaking circles. And when people learn how to do that, you get to that place of harmony and balance. Like at the end of this performance, I felt that. I was grooving in that.
You was ready to get out there and dance too, see? Told you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's a part of the restorative justice process, is as a community not really punishing, not the social control, but how do we get to harmony and recognizing that conflict is a normal part of life. And inside of us, let me tell you, I have internal conflict. And so if I can recognize that there's internal conflict in me, yeah, that negativity bias wants to take over. But can I water the positive thoughts? Can I water my positive words to speak well to people? Then I'm working on the embodiment of restorative justice. And so that's important, is that the personal is political, like we saw here tonight. That was just so well done in the dance, and in the dances, and in just the gestures and the words and the film. So, like, to me, all of this art brings healing, and I can't wait for this to get out there for the political, like what James and the Burns Institute is doing, is creating that policy change. And so this is going to bring awareness to our communities. And it's the people of color, dancers, singers, the ones who are doing the activism work, that's going to raise the power in our communities so we can change the laws. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that right here. Lead in.
lot of things, but let's focus on the films. We live in a celebrity culture, we live in a culture, we live in a day and time where many people in our community really respond when they see their names in lights, when they see people that they know, who are made to look good, you know, sound good. Like you on the radio, you was on TV. That means a lot. And now you have these documentaries and you have these films where you're putting the ordinary folks into, you know, well-produced. I mean, it's like, man, I was in your film. You know, that's a big deal. Talk about the importance of that, and then when you have these messages of social justice or healing and all that, and how that is able to connect. My experience of being on radio is that it's a big deal when people show up to some of these stations, especially when I've been on the commercial stations. When I was on KML, folks was like, yo, you need me to show up at 4 or 5 in the morning, I'm there, you know, and it made a big difference when they were putting messages out to the community. You have these films that are accessible. It's a big deal. So talk a little bit about that and how that they can connect with the on-the-ground work that all these other folks are doing, especially since you played a key role in this production.
I'm glad you asked that question, Davey, because I've worked in media a lot of years, and you know, typically documentary, you know, films or films in general, this is mass media, and it takes mass money to get them produced. It's a very long and arduous and complex process. I guess I had the benefit of the curse of being married to a woman who had not studied film, and so she wasn't buying into all the reasons that I would give her daily about why she couldn't do this or couldn't do that. The result is, here we are 20 years later, we make these films almost without a budget. Now, it's hard, you know, that whole thing about Q, and, you know, we are very much personality dominated, driven society. You know, we have a much easier time affixing a concept to an individual than we do a principle. This is how we do. We just tie in two people. It's like, oh, like so-and-so, or that person personifies what I believe in. We are just, and you know, it's the People Magazine Society, you know, TMZ, the whole thing. It's just, that's where we are now. We make films, and one of the things that we were like, when we started, I was like, well, yeah, let's see if we can get Cornel West, and let's see if we can get, you know, this person and that person has all this recognizability. Well, we happen to live here in the Bay Area where there's an awful lot of good thinking, and we know some really amazing people who may not be as famous, but maybe should be. So one of the things that we do is when we feel there's someone who is a good thinker and knows something about a subject, you know, we want to get them on film. We want to get them in there. Why? Because what they are saying needs to be heard by more people. So, you know, we're making this film like we make all the films because we want to start national conversations. We want to deepen conversations, be it about race. In this case, it's about restorative justice and trauma and healing, and how we, as a society, treat ourselves. You know, and we have a lot of unlearning to do because we have done a lot of bad things to ourselves. If we consider ourselves a society, we've done a lot of bad things to ourselves for a long time, and it's become just normal. That's what unconsciousness is, letting that perpetuate. So we're trying to go against that, and for us, I don't know, if anybody here knows how to make something go viral, please come and see me. Because that's what we want to do. We want to make this and the work we do go viral and get out there. Well, we haven't figured out how to premeditate that, but what we do know is that something that doesn't exist will definitely not go viral. So we did a film early. We did a film earlier. It was called Cracking the Codes, the System of Racial Inequity. It is the film that maybe a lot of you have seen, a lot of people have done, but we do these films to get people to start thinking and talking. We want them to be, we want it to happen in a space that is safe enough so that we can get away from the blame shame game, because that is just totally useless in any conversation. But how do we move the conversation to another level? I mean, we need to do that. We've been kind of stuck on stupid, to use a Van Jones term, for way too long. So we do these films, and I hope that, maybe James Bell will become more famous than he is, because that means that he is famous. But everybody can use a little more fame. But, I hope to do that, and it's not just James either. I love this guy, by the way. He's a brilliant thinker. I could listen to him all day long. But there are other people in the film who also had some really, really important things to say. So we're very proud of the fact that we've been able to maybe give a little more voice to someone like Sonia Shah, who's deeply steeped in restorative justice work and a great thinker about it. And Sujata Balika is another person who's really deeply involved in this work. And there are many other people who I will forget, cannot mention all of them, of course. But the hope is that the things that they say and their good thinking will get to people who will then take it on and consider it. That's what we want to do, is create a movement and make a change. It happens because there are people who are doing this work. I'm not one of them, I'm an observer, but there are people here who are doing this work, who are doing great work, and it needs to be seen and witnessed by more people so that people can say, do we really have to do justice that way? There's got to be another way, right?
Well, that's a point well taken. I don't get in the signal to wrap up, so I'll just give everybody like 30 seconds to say their goodbyes and anything you want to ask the audience as we kind of close out. So what's your ask? You want to go viral?
I'll just finish up. I'll just say a real quick thing and then I'll just go. Thank you, Nicole. You actually have made me tonight see the work we've been doing in another light. I'm so thrilled. I went from the initial filmmaker moment of, wait a minute, that's our film and it's not even released, to, this is like the greatest thing in the world because it's expanding the work. It's expanding what's being done. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
So I want to thank everyone who came here, because it's the participatory. This was like participatory theater, participatory dance, and it's when we can come together as a community and participate in our democracy that we will change things. When we can participate in our arts and see that art is for everyone, and shout out to Akanati and those who funded this too.
I want to thank you, Nicole. As I mentioned, I was born in segregation. I desegregated swimming pools, lunch counters. I was spit on by people who didn't even know me. And for you and your team to take words that I have and put it to this kind of art is unimaginable for somebody that came from where I came from, to be, I don't want to say honored, but to be acknowledged in this way. I can't tell you how meaningful it is for me and for all of those that I try to represent in doing the work that we do.
So I want to thank you, Nicole, for having me on the panel. For also letting me, I worked for James for 5 years, so I don't get to see my former boss and friend very much, so I'm also glad you got me to see James and Davey. I think one of the things that's most spectacular about this work and most, and really hard to watch at the same time, is that it talks a lot about the stealing of joy and the things that we do unintentionally as adults to kids. And I think that that's a lot of what we're trying to fix came from us believing that we knew better, right? And believing that we had to teach kids better. And the thing about this, like Joy DeGruy, her words were in this. She tells a story. She often tells this story. And I actually remind myself of this as a mother of 6 children about this story. And I just want to say it real quick because it gives a lot of insight. It's about a little black girl and her mom that are in a laundromat. And the little girl brings a ball. And she's bouncing that ball all over the laundromat. And there's a white woman in the laundromat who sees her bouncing this ball. Now this little girl isn't doing nothing, it's not hitting any of the machines, but the mom immediately snatches the little black girl up and says, "What are you doing? Get over here and sit down." And that actually comes from this deep-seated, right, as people of color especially, idea that we are seen, we know we're seen. We know our kids are seen. And the idea that comes from is this idea that if they're not seen, maybe they won't get hurt. Maybe they won't get shot. Maybe they won't get killed, right? Same thing that our ancestors, my ancestors went through. Many of your ancestors went through, right? In a war, when our villages were being pillaged, right? We didn't want our kids to get seen. If we could just keep them alive, quiet enough that nobody saw them, quiet enough that they can survive, so that our generations can live and live. And so I say we have to think about that in a whole different way. I can tell you from teaching school that if you ask kids to draw pictures of the world and their world, and think of anything that they possibly can dream up to make this world a better place, they'll stall, because we don't teach them how to think that another world is possible. And so I say that to say that if you're a parent or you have influence in kids' lives, that it starts with the way that you talk to them. It starts with the way that you think about them. And it definitely starts with the way that you believe they're gonna take what you teach them and utilize it in the world. So thank you very much.
Nicole, thank you for that introduction. I think it's important that folks who are doing this thing that we call art are very intentional, the way that the Shot Butlers have been very intentional about going out and collaborating with these movers and shakers, so that that information is able to take a form that we can digest. This is something that Public Enemy was very clear about doing, like getting those speeches, getting those samples, and putting them so that you would know who Joanne Chesimard was. That's how a lot of people learned about Assata Shakur. You know, putting those speeches of Malcolm and all that there. Now the difference was, at the time, they didn't know that folks were sitting there going, we need to regulate this. So they were like, you violated that copyright, you violated that copyright, and started taxing them. So you can't do that on record anymore. You know, somebody owned Malcolm's words, somebody owned Martin's words, so you don't see and hear those on records anymore. But as we can deal with homegrown talent and folks that we know, James Bell here and Rose and Krea and all that, we can own that so that can go on and really be a benefit that you can't stop. You know, and I think a lot of artists are looking at that now and they're saying, you know what, I'm gonna get these bands to play the music that we can sample, so that these big six companies, you can't regulate it because it's my homeboy down the street who I got it. That voice that we have on it, that's James. We already worked it out. We cooked dinner for him, and we got to use his voice, and it's all good, you know. And so I say that as a tale of caution of just seeing why that disappeared, and that it was a power structure that was very upset, that folks were like, yo, they're learning about all this stuff on records, shut it down. But now we can have it be reborn again in different forms, and seeing that dance and seeing all this brilliance connected with the movement and all the brilliance that you all have. That's the combination, that's the winning strategy, and let us keep it up. And the way it's going to be viral is if everybody here talks about it the way that we talk about a Trump tweet. If we talk about the way we talk about some sort of upsetness that we have, the same way we talk about that about this, everything will go viral. So let's make that a new challenge for all of us. So peace to everybody, and thank you.